Welcome to TrulyFit.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast. Why don't you give my audience and listeners a little background as to who you are and what you do in the health and fitness landscape?
Sure. I am a master level certified nutritionist. I have clinical experience in hormone replacement therapy nutrition, as well as medical weight loss, nutrition programs, and cancer client nutrition. So I have done that for a long time. I'm also a health coach, a holistic functional practitioner. So I enjoy coaching people who are, struggling with the nutrition aspect as well as their training. So I also do personal training as well.
It's quite the resume. Most people try to niche down to one thing, but you are like me, a lot of different areas to work in. Sometimes that's good. And pun intended here, you have your eggs in multiple baskets in the fitness and health world. And we're going to have a lot of conversation today around eggs. But do you consider eggs a very good source of protein when you're working with clients? Are there clients who just don't like eggs and you're like, this is a problem? Give me sort of your 411 on eggs and why you would give them to a client as far as like a good protein source.
Sure. Eggs are a big topic right now. There's been a shortage. So we definitely have seen that on the shelves. The price has gone up, I believe, 60% in just a year. The avian flu pretty much hit crops hard this year, so flocks. Basically what happened is now the farmers are having to eliminate crops, flocks, even if there's just one bird that tests positive, they are, required to basically eliminate that group of birds. So, we're seeing not just an economic, crisis on shelves, but we're also seeing it in the farming industry right now. So it's kind of two things happened at once. And so now, here it is spring, we have this Easter celebration stuff coming up. So there's all things eggs, that are happening right now. So a lot of us are trying to double our flock, and help. Or for example, I've had several neighbors right now that are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to pay $8 for a dozen of eggs, because they're trying to purchase organic or purchase some farm eggs, and they are seeing the prices is just crazy. So yes, currently in my kitchen, I have 2 incubators going, and we have a little process of some eggs that have just started, some eggs that are going to hatch within the next few days, and then I have some young ones that are in my garage that will then move out to our barn here soon. So it's an adventure.
Before we get into maybe some specific terms of eggs and go down through the organic and free range and these sorts of things, you just mentioned this, so I want to go into it a little bit further, that people are seeing the egg prices skyrocket. Are they, you think, replacing their protein with something else? Are they just eating the cost, or are they buying cheaper eggs?
Yeah, so you were talking about protein. Yeah, eggs are the nutritionist's, biggest, cleanest source of protein. It's the most digestible source, so it has all of the amino acids that we need to build muscle, right? So, or even not just muscle in the body, but there's several processes in the body that require protein. And so eggs are one of the easiest things that I can say, hey, this is a clean source, of protein for your diet. If we have a few of these during the day, I know that they're getting a great source. And there's several different dietary, preferences, right? So, even if I have a vegetarian, they may still eat eggs. It just depends. So it's really one of my favorite things to recommend. But as far as other sources of protein, I really think people don't want to give up their eggs. It's kind of the standard American diet to include eggs, and eggs are in a lot of things as well. So they fortify other foods, so if I'm baking or making a healthy, dessert, we'll say, eggs are part of that healthy recommendation in there. So, and then it goes to say, well, what's the debate on eggs have cholesterol? They have since, tons of studies come out on basically saying that, cholesterol that's in the eggs is not a significant contributor to things like heart disease, what we're worried about with cholesterol. So there's better pros than there are cons with having your eggs in your diet, and just knowing, if you go beyond having, 3 yolks in the day, you then exceeded, your cholesterol recommendation for the day. So you have to adapt and adjust. So, but when you do the breakdown, a lot of people wonder, well, if I just eat egg whites, and take the cholesterol out, which is in the yolk, that breakdown, an average grade A size egg has about 6.5 grams of protein in it. 3.2 or somewhere around in there, 3 of it comes from the white, where the other portion of it does come from the yolk. So if you do take out the yolks, you are then removing some of the protein as well. So does that answer that question?
They've also done a lot of studies. This is a whole nother conversation. And again, it's slightly above our pay grade, and science is ever changing. But as far as cholesterol is concerned, you typically need 3 variables for it to be a problem. You need to be overweight, you need to have high A1C, and also are eating too much cholesterol in order for cholesterol to be a problem. Meaning, I weigh 170 pounds. I don't have any comorbidities or pre-existing conditions. If I have a slightly high cholesterol, both, let's say, HDL and LDL, I'm typically not somebody who's going to be developing plaque and having clogged arteries. It's
Correct.
they point to the cholesterol, but there's usually a lot of other underlying conditions in patients who are having
Sure.
plaque and having these artery buildups due to the cholesterol, not just the cholesterol itself.
Well, and cholesterol is used in your body as well.
Yeah.
The good cholesterols are used for hormone processes. If, all of a sudden I put somebody who's overweight, on a low cholesterol diet, and they're struggling with low energy, and we're working on things like testosterone needs cholesterol to work, so, there's lots of processes in the body that, we do need those things for. It's just whether we have balance or overabundance, or like you said, comorbidities,
Yeah.
So.
So let's start to define eggs and the terms around them. I go to the grocery store, I look at all these eggs, obviously various prices. We just talked about it. All those prices went up. There's eggs there that say nothing on them, and they're $2.99, and then the next eggs go up and they might say organic, and they're $4.99, and the next one say free range, and they're $6.99. How do I really know the differences between each individual one? Why would I buy one over the other, and what are maybe the nutritional differences between them?
Sure. And I could talk on this so much. This is definitely a soapbox in our industry, because labeling and marketing really tries to trick the consumer. So it really, and then they take labeling from other industries and try to put it onto, other products. So for example, let's talk about 3 terms just to keep it simple, cage-free, range-free, pasture-raised. All of those are lovely terms that are trying to get the consumer to think that they're being, a little less cruel, but cage-free doesn't mean that they are cruelty-free, right? So cage-free basically takes the bird out of a cage that's about the size of a piece of paper. So 8 by 11, that's the cage that bird, if you can imagine. I wish I could go grab my rooster and hold him so you can see the size of this bird, and you're placing him in a size of a piece of paper. So they're overcrowded. So what they did was they said, okay, we're going to take them out of the cages. We're going to let them move a little bit. But the barns that they are putting them in, there's no regulation. So, they're basically a big, long, let's say a chicken barn, if you've seen a chicken barn, with no division in there. And I know we've seen media pictures, or if you have, you've seen a ton of birds on the floor. That's the only requirement for a cage-free bird. It doesn't mean they're not barn-free. It doesn't ever mean that they're exposed to the outdoors either. So then you move up to the next term, which is range-free. Range-free, there's still no inspection required. There's still no standard. Range-free would mean that they are exposed to outside, but there is no stipulation on how long or how are they getting out. Are all the birds actually making it outside, or do they just have access to outside? So that's where it's just a verbiage that they were placing on, just a label to trick the consumer. Pasture raised would be the next step up. They're allowed to be outside. They have typically, they're saying that they can be outside for 2 hours to 6 hours in the day. But once again, there's no inspections required. So, and all those terms can be on a box without what you are really looking for, which is the USDA organic label. So we'll talk a little bit about those three terms in combination with either USDA organic label, or it might say certified humane. Certified humane is actually something that is regulated. So it is required for them to have 2 square foot per bird outdoor space and at least 6 hours a day. So certified humane can be on a box with pasture raised and you're doing better, right? And that's the thing, is we want to do better. But if we have that USDA organic symbol on there, that's ultimately the only thing that I would say, okay, if I'm going to spend $5 on organic food, eggs, that it's going to have the seal on it. I'm not going to do anything in between. Let's say a $4 dozen of eggs, it doesn't have the seal on it and it says pasture raised, or even certified humane. Certified humane is doing better. It's next in the tier, but you're ultimately looking for that organic seal because inspections are required by the USDA. And they actually, so there's 2 things here. This is like unpacking this. The word organic is patented. And it is patented to a 95% organic process. Now, you can have a box that says organic and there's no label. So then it's really confusing. You're like, wait a minute, I thought I was buying 100% organic eggs because it says the word organic. Well, it doesn't have the symbol. So if the symbol is on there, it's certified by the USDA at 100%. That means the process for up to 2 years. So let's talk about, we were looking at houses, and looking at a house, and we were going to have organic farming on that land, and they treat the grass to sell the house. Man, so now I have to wait 2 years for my grass, for my open free range organic chickens, even for the meat of the bird, because the bird is consuming so that's what the USDA does, is they make sure that process is 100%. So if you're buying something that says organic, you're doing better once again, but it's still only 95%. So there's lots of levels. And then you have certain things like that will say hormone and antibiotic free. I've got a whole nother category of just gimmick labeling that we can talk about if you want me to go ahead.
Before we go into that, I have some questions here. I want to stay on sort of this chicken raising questions, because I think this is a good thing to go down. I would imagine there's even another level above that, what you do, right? So what is the difference between I don't know if the proper term is raise chickens, but you raise chickens and get your own eggs. Is there a difference between what you do and, let's say, the highest level stamps and grades on eggs? If I go to the store and I get those pasteurized eggs that are USDA labeled, are your eggs better? You meaning like the person who's doing them in their home? If so, why? And the reason why I ask this is because I would imagine chickens never need to go inside. Couldn't they be outside all day long? Shouldn't they be eating like worms and bugs off the ground?
Well, and there's lots of debate there too, because then you have, there's a whole nother farming industry that's trying to appeal to the vegetarian and say that the chickens have vegetarian diet and never eat things like worms and bugs. So yes, you want a chicken to be exactly a chicken, right? So the first question you asked me was, that I heard anyway, was, do they need to go in the barn? Yes. Chickens naturally have in their time clock where they go in for almost like shelter, right? They roost. So, it's funny because some of ours will roost in the barn and some of them will go find a place and roost in but it's also survival of the fittest. It is a farm. We do have, we're in North Georgia. We've got bobcats, we've got foxes and things. We've got hawks. It's always the nature channel here. Lately we've been dealing with a bobcat that's been picking off our flock. So we let them roost at a certain time that, is least likely for them to get picked off, but then here come the hawks. So we have roosters for that reason, because the roosters will protect them. And you'll see, so we have an open fence area. Then we have a fenced area that has a fencing cover over the top, and then they have a barn, and they know how to get to all of it, So during the day, they, when the sun comes up, that's how that works, right? The rooster crows, they all know they'll go out. And we also have ducks. The ducks are part of that flock, and they do the same thing. But they go all the way out to the open pen. And they'll go out there, but you will see and hear, if I hear a hawk in our area, that rooster, you'll hear him crow throughout the day. And when he's crowing throughout the day, he's not crowing like in the morning. He's crowing for them to come take shelter. And you'll see them all run back up into the caged coop where they know they're safe. Or if they're out, they'll run under a tree or under my front porch, which I avidly have to kick them out of because they'll scratch out your garden beds and things. But they do definitely, forage on bugs, and they, our ducks will find pockets of snails and stuff and all that. They have calcium that happens in those bugs. That's their protein, and then they eat fresh grass, and they will even pick leaves off of fallen trees and things like that. So, they have good nutrients. What we do here, I won't treat my grass. I don't, and our neighbors, we don't let them go too far, so they stay pretty close. We don't treat our grass, and we make sure that they, get fortified with calcium if we, have had a shortage in any kind of nutrient in their diet, but those are minerals.
Do you know if any of those terms mean that those chickens are potentially eating bugs and being outdoors? Meaning, like we just talked about how you'll see like vegetarian raised. Am I assuming that if it doesn't say vegetarian raised, let's just say it says pasteurized, USDA, no vegetarian, should I assume that those chickens are actually potentially eating bugs and eating other things off the ground, and they're healthier? Because what I do see just in a coloration is I'll see darker egg yolks in non-vegetarian chickens, which to me probably means something.
So that's a if we're going to get technical, methionine is part of that protein that the bugs are giving it, right? And the calcium and the other micronutrients, the minerals that they're getting from that. And when you see the vegetarian, diet fed to a chicken, they're removing that, and so they're missing that. And there's actually a study that when you remove that type of protein out of their diet, they start to actually turn on each other. So they're trying to fortify, the vegetarian, fed chickens with that actual protein so that they, but then there's some supplementation, and then it's synthetic, and it's not even the natural process. So then there we go. It's to argue, interesting to say we have a vegetarian diet, but we're eating eggs and from an animal that is meant to eat those things. So there's a lot of debate.
Yeah, I've had friends tell me who have chickens. I don't know much about them. Obviously, that's why we're having this talk. But if they were to drop a mouse inside that chicken coop, that mouse is dead in a minute, and those chickens are ripping that apart. So, which would lead me to believe that there is no vegetarian chicken naturally.
Yeah. And I mean, they are, they know, they're smart, I mean, there's certain things that they're not smart about, but, they have instinct that's exactly what they do. We've had snakes on our property where, the rooster has attacked, or, when the foxes, trying to grab our duck, the roosters come out of nowhere, and, so they definitely, they're meant to eat that anyway.
Well, that's good to know. Now, you also mentioned ducks. I'm a little curious about that. I've had duck eggs before. It's hard for me to describe maybe the difference, but I'll ask you two questions here. You can answer either one first. Number one, are duck eggs hard to produce and more expensive? Is that why we don't see them? And two, how would you describe them as far as like a taste or size or coloration difference?
Now, my husband's better at talking about this because he had a huge duck farm, poultry he'll tell you, man, the ducks are in season right now. And so for me, I have to basically Easter egg hunt for their eggs. These ducks don't lay, they will lay about three or four eggs in a week all year long. Right now, but in springtime they will dump all their eggs at once. Whatever they can, it could be because they'll have a nest. That's why you'll see like a mama, with all her ducklings during this time of year. So right now we have two female ducks. And ducks are messy. We only have a few just because the kids, and we enjoy them. They're fun. We have one. She's the oldest bird in our entire flock, and we call her Downy. She's the survival of the fittest. She's been attacked the most and survived, and so she just kind of rules the roost. But they have more protein for sure. They are richer in flavor. They actually have a lot more micronutrients, minerals, and I would say, just from my experience watching them and owning them and knowing them, they eat way more of the bugs, and they're definitely, you see them carry around a lot more to break up all those proteins. So think that way. They're eating it larger amounts. But all of my friends who bake swear by duck eggs, are better for baking. They just have a better consistency. The yolk is a lot bigger, and the whites are a lot thicker. So but it just goes to say that they're higher in nutrients.
Sure,
so
that makes sense, and that's good to know. We just spoke about food. You talked about the consistency of the yolk and how the egg white is thicker. Just when making foods, whether it's desserts or otherwise with eggs, I think some people are somewhat limited. For me, it's like, okay, well, I can eat eggs in the morning. I can make eggs a million different ways in the morning, right? You can scramble them. You can throw things in them. Maybe egg salad in the afternoon, but what else can we really make with eggs, as far as like you talking to clients about how to design eggs to make it a little bit more interesting and creative? Is there any sort of egg meal that you yourself put together?
Sure. I did just recently this weekend, because we had an overabundance. I mean, I've given my neighbors some, just trying to help everybody out. And then we have several athletes in our house. So I hard boil some and leave those in there for the kids. And, if you can get your 5-year-old started with some scrambled eggs, or even 2-year-old, just whatever you can start with. Then you just kind of change it. Okay, well, now that we tried scrambled eggs, well, now let's go ahead and let's do an over easy egg with some toast, and then let's change it. Let's do a hard boiled egg and see if they like, oh, this is Easter egg and fun. That's one of the best times to introduce hard boiled eggs to your kids. And now, if you're like, oh, my kid won't eat any of that. If you try it and continue to try, it's training for children, right? But now my 7-year-old will walk in and be like, can I crack that egg? And she wants to eat that hard-boiled egg. So those are snacks in our fridge almost at all the time. And then this weekend I made quiche. And what we're doing is we're starting a new garden. Of course, this is the time. And so I had herbs that came from last year's garden, and I'm just trying to, let me reuse some of this stuff that's frozen, so I pulled out spinach and chives and let's see, some other herbs, cilantro, and then I had some bacon bits, and just threw that all together, and the eggs, and blend them up. It was probably like 6 eggs for that quiche, and put it in and baked it. And then I'm like, why don't I make some custard? Custard literally is milk, eggs, and a little bit of sugar, and making another high protein type of dessert. None of the kids liked it, but they were like, that's like an egg pie, Mom. But, next time I might use a different type of milk to make it a little bit thicker so that the kids may start to like it. I'm sure the first time I had custard, it was, loaded with all kinds of sugar and fatty milk, but now that I'm older and I'm like, okay, well, we can make this healthy version of it, and let's make the milk go down to a little bit less fat. And, so anyways, I may try that a little different next time.
Yeah.
But you'll see, like, even Starbucks, a healthy recommendation I have for Starbucks menu is their spinach feta wrap, and that's got eggs in it. And it's one of the best ones that I would say, okay, if you have to eat out, this is a good recommendation here. Or you'll see Dunkin' Donuts offers an egg wrap,
I think both of them, sorry to interrupt. I think both of them now also offer just like basically like a little egg in a quiche, egg bites, right? Which are great. And you can make them on your own by just getting a muffin pan, muffin tin, right? And do the same recipe you just said for the quiche and pour them in. And you have a little morning
and you can take the crust out of there if you didn't want to do the crust and you're doing more of a keto, but I don't mind the carbs, especially early in the morning, especially for, if I'm going to do a spin class later in the day or training, I'm definitely going to have some carbs in there too. So yeah, all those things work together.
Yeah. I like also how, real quick before you go on, I like how you said to sort of change it for the children. I have a daughter who's 22 months. Not only do you have to keep reintroducing things, because sometimes they won't like it one day and the next day they'll like it the same exact way, but it's also good to just tinker with them a little bit, right? What can I do with this? Is it a consistency thing? Is it a flavor thing? Just to get them to like it, and you have to keep tinkering.
100%. We have a blended family. We are literally the Brady Bunch from a wonderful COVID marriage. It was great. We met in 3 months. We were married with 6 kids. Wow. So he has 3 and I have 3. And of course we come from different, parenting styles and backgrounds, and eating and food is a big component of that. And so, I have children of all ages. Mine definitely, I have an oldest and a youngest, that are, and his are all stair-stepped in between. So, my youngest, I'm definitely doing the training with her, and sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to make her eat it because it's a battle. But my oldest eats just about anything. I mean, like, and so with his kids that came into the mix, it's taken maybe a year of like, oh, I don't know about that. That's different. I cook all things Thai. I cook all things, lots of vegetables. I barely ever touch a box. That my husband said, I think I've seen you in 2 years, buy a box food, if that. And it was by request, like somebody, but it's just because I always buy ingredients that I'm going to cook, and if I'm not going to cook, I'm going to do that and prepare for the week, and have something that's available that we've made. And if we go out, because we're normal people and have sports and athletics, and we do go out, we have different selections. So anywho, the kids have all kind of, within a year, even the older ones, they've varied out with their selections and will try, different things, and love but it is training. It's as part of parenting. If you want your kids to be healthy, you have to also, expose them to that, and you have to do it over and over again, just like you.
I saw a funny video of a parent saying like, oh yeah, it's important to let your kids eat healthy. It's also important to let your kids eat what you eat. And then the mom like finally noticed, she's like, oh, when the kid eats what I eat, he's not eating healthy because I'm not eating healthy, right? So like when you have a kid, yes, you really notice, you're like, what was the level of like vegetables and fresh food that I had today? Because if my kid's eating the food that I'm eating, now I really have to pay attention to what it is that I'm eating, right? So we do more smoothies in the morning. My daughter has smoothies, and we make sure there's always like some sort of green that she's eating, and it really is. It's actually helped us be cleaner in our eating.
Yes. Well, and another thing is a lot of people don't think, if they're on a health journey, and your kid hasn't, let's say my 5-year-old, 5 is a good age to think about that, or a 6-year-old, basically I make a protein in the shake in the morning, and I'm just going about my day, and I'm setting vitamins out. And then, I ask her what she wants for breakfast, and she's like, okay, I want toast and an egg or whatever. And then, why wouldn't I say, hey, do you want to try this protein shake? I mean, it doesn't take but 2 seconds to grab a little glass in there and say, here, why don't you try this? And now she'll say, hey, can I have some of that chocolate peanut butter drink? And I'm like, oh, the protein shake. Yeah. So, and then it goes to speak that 16-year-old to be soon, she, makes a protein shake before she gets ready for school. And, pretty much they all do. The blender is an avid thing that goes on in our house in the morning. But, it's training I did early on. So finally now I'm feeling it. So it will happen for you as well.
Yeah, and it's also funny that, the ingredient mixtures and how they're presented, which we sort of already hit on, just getting creative. So my daughter really likes Greek yogurt. She likes fruit as well, but it's give or take. One day blueberries will be her favorite thing. The next day she'll throw them across the room, right? So you never know.
Yeah.
But if I blend that Greek yogurt with any fruit, she thinks it's a treat. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe Dad's giving this to me because mom drinks this and it's in a cup and it looks like a different color. Maybe the texture is slightly different, right? But really it's the same thing. I just gave her the Greek yogurt mixed with the blueberries. So I think, just getting creative is really important in that process.
Yeah. And definitely, going back to the eggs, eggs are a good way to fortify into, anything that you're cooking. And then it goes to say too that, they keep you fuller longer. There's other benefits that when you are on a health journey that are helping, regulate your glucose, for example, keeping your blood sugar from dropping so low because you just ate some simple carbs. Like I love the toast, but we need to have some proteins with it. It has to be balanced, right? Balance is my favorite word in this industry. So I did want to mention some of the gimmick words just so people can know, because these are gimmick words that can be on anything. A lot of times, you'll see, you can see this on bread, you can see it on apples, you can see it anywhere. But eggs are really a big one that they'll say, okay, these are hormone and antibiotic free, they're all natural and farm fresh. What do those terms mean? Farm fresh, there's no stipulation behind what farm fresh really does mean. And all natural, an egg is going to be all natural. It's a process of an egg. So those are just words, that is used for tactic. The hormone and antibiotic free is a big one because it comes from the livestock industry. It doesn't have anything to do with the eggs because they don't give hormone injections to chickens. They don't fortify anything in there. The hormone and antibiotic can be used interchangeably. So in livestock, if you see hormone free, it could be given antibiotics. If you see antibiotic free, it could be given a hormone as an antibiotic. So they're interchangeable, and they can put one on there and be using the other. So when all else is said, when I tell people, look for, if you're going to pay the money for something that's healthier and you're on that healthy journey, look for organic. The word organic is you're doing better, right? And then if you can get that symbol, get the symbol. If you're going to spend the money, you might as well do it. And then there goes the debate of, what's more costly, your health, because later on, eventually healthcare, you're going to spend more money on healthcare and being sick if you're not making healthier choices in your diet and your lifestyle,
Well said. I echo those thoughts. And eventually, let's just talk about if someone has a budget of some sort, are you willing to cut from that budget somewhere else to get those eggs that are not only taste better, because they do, but they're better for you? Some people are not, and that's okay. That's a decision that you consciously made. And other people are. Maybe somebody has a line of diminishing, like a hard line. You might, like you just mentioned, the $5 line. Maybe they go, I'm going to get the best eggs I can possibly get for $4.99 or less. I'm not paying over $5, and that's fine as well. We all have different boundaries based upon our finances, and I'm somebody who I actually don't have a rationale reason. Sometimes I buy $9 eggs. Sometimes I buy $3 eggs. So it just depends, right?
Market research, right?
So it's market research. I want to try the different eggs. Maybe it's a new brand. Maybe I'm subconsciously, probably is what's happening sometimes too, is I see a word on there that attracts me to that. So I've always been, like I told you, attracted to not seeing the word vegetarian on there, because I have the strong partiality to say I want my chickens eating everything because I like the darker yolks. But knowing that, like you said, if I do want the optimal eggs, typically, if I'm not worried about finances, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I want the USDA symbol and I want pasteurized. I'm not really going to get anything higher level than those two connected.
Well, pasture
Pasture
raised,
raised.
yeah,
Pasture
for
raised.
sure. Yeah. Well, and the other, so that then goes to the next question that I always get. Well, where do you shop? Well, where do you find this? And how do I do this? You know, and so I shop all over. But I'm also a mom of 6 and busy, and we have multiple things going on. So realistically and doable. There are Saturday farmers markets somewhere near you. I guarantee you there are farmers markets that are somewhere near you that are going to have local eggs. And if you don't know where that is, you can easily walk into Tractor Supply, or you can walk into a local farm store, like you're going to have Ace Hardware, any of those places. And I guarantee you can ask the cashier or somebody in that store, and they're going to know where you can find local eggs. All over social media, you can ask, where are local eggs, and people, your community pages or anything like that, they'll know. But I do like to shop at Aldi. I'm a big Aldi person just because they do have their own organic brands. Sometimes they have fair trade. I like Trader Joe's, Aldi, all those things. They're kind of all connected. But just because it's organic doesn't mean it has a ton of junk in it. So that I will throw that out there. But Aldi tends to be a little less expensive and does offer organic with the label and produce. So I heard this. I don't know. I hear this a lot where they'll say, I buy produce from Aldi and it goes bad on my counter in like 2 days. And I say,
That's a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why would it do that? Because it's not preserved for life, right? I mean, that is what we want. So same thing with like deli bread. I know somebody just to relate to the average consumer, if you've gone to the deli and you've gotten deli bread, if you look at the ingredients, there's probably 4 or 5 ingredients on there: flour, water, yeast, maybe sugar, salt. So what happens after 2 days? That deli bread goes bad on your counter, right? So it goes to say that they're not preserved, and that's okay. The less amount of ingredients, the less amount of chemicals, the better. So it speaks to all things food, eggs in general. But Walmart has done a better job at getting some other selections in there for organics, and they're on the lower end as far as pricing goes. If you're going to their bigger box stores, Costco is my favorite, just because they offer more selection when it comes to fair trade fair trade and organic. So those are typically where I like to shop. But local farmers markets are people like me that sends my teenager with 12 dozen eggs to set up a little stand, and he's worked hard. Chickens are not cheap. I will say if you're going to start it and you want to do it and you want to be economically lower, I would say just get the 4 that they say. You can't go home with less than 4 chicks from wherever you're getting them, because they are a flock and they need friends. So start there, and they need just a small house so you can move around, where they can go in at night, and that's probably on the low end of about $200-300. But then, of course, they're bags of feed, so there's a lot of jokes in the chicken world that, you think those eggs are cheap, are free eggs, but they're actually the most expensive eggs you've ever, bought. Now I'm 4 years into this now. Now my eggs have definitely paid for themselves, but within, the first 2 years, you're not gonna, I think the first year I spent $1,000 on my chicken barn and the chicken run and the feed, and we did the math, and eventually it paid for itself by year 2.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it paid for itself insofar as the process of the eggs, but there's not a price that you could put on understanding the process, how to do it, right? So you're able to
Right.
not only experience doing something fun and special with
Yes.
your family and friends and whoever else, but in addition to that, you can then pass on that knowledge to other people, because you've
Yes.
now acquired a new skill in this.
Yes.
Hence the reason, part of the
Well,
reason
and
you're on
it's-
here is explaining this skill to us, which is really kind of cool, because most people do not know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, and you don't have to know how to do it. You learn and you acquire it. I had never raised chickens before. We grew up on a horse farm, and we might have had one chicken that randomly was given to us. But, I don't ever remember us having a significant amount of chickens. My husband, I had the chickens before I met my husband. So I definitely had 2 years of calling my dad and being like, how do I do this? And research and learning. But, one of the reasons why I bought the property was to have chickens and the ability for my kids to help. Because I remember growing up on a farm. For me, it was one of the best things developmentally, to have. My son, we call him the chicken tender, because he takes care of them, and they are almost like his therapy animals. He's 13, and if he's had a rough day, he'll go out, and you see him out there, petting a chicken, or I've seen him ride a scooter with a chicken, but they're excited about hatching them, and they get to see that process. They get to see the process of bearing their chicken that they may have named. They get to see the process of farm life, of us having to, butcher a rooster because we hatched out 6 and we can't walk through the yard without being attacked. We've and they're doing their job. The roosters are doing their job, but sometimes, one's going to go in my freezer, and, we're going to eat that. We made my mom chicken noodle soup with the rooster that we hatched out a year ago, and took it to her when she was sick. So, they get to see that whole process. They get to also, learn about the incubation process and development and all of that. So it's definitely a great teaching place. And like I said, you don't have to be on the large scale of $1,000, chicken project. You can absolutely be on a lower scale, purchase 4 little chicks at $1.25, a piece, and, and have them in a Tupperware bin until you can figure out what to do, with the next stage and go from there. So, it's been great. I've loved it.
Well, that's great information. I want to go back to something you said too earlier about the food going bad. That your client said they were buying produce at Aldi, it was going bad. We as professionals, and I'm sure you agree with this, and I'm sure you do this, we have to explain to our clients why that's a good thing, not only from the health standpoint, but from a habit standpoint, right? So if you're typically the big issue is that people are buying things and then they open up their drawer 5 days later and they go bad and they throw them out. That's like, well, why? It's because you should have eaten that already, right? That should
Yes.
already have been there. We don't all need hard, like steadfast plans where you have to write down every single thing that you're going to eat and stick to it. But you should have
Right.
an idea of what you're going to eat for the week. So for example, I have a board in my kitchen and I'll write down all the dinners we're going to have for that week and I buy those dinners. Now, if I want Wednesday's dinner on Monday and if I want Tuesday's dinner on Friday, that's fine. I juxtapose those, right? I switch them around depending upon maybe what my wife ate for lunch or
Yes.
the time that I have that individual night to cook. Maybe Wednesday's meal is going to take me 45 minutes to cook and I only have 25 minutes because of something that happened in my day. So then I switch the meals around. But you should have an idea of what you're going to cook for the week. And I think, we need to explain that to our clients and say, it's good that these things go bad quickly because that means that's going to force you to eat the healthier foods.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of what we do, right? As a nutritionist, when people are like, I'm at a loss, I don't know what to do. So then I just don't do anything. And then I'm overwhelmed and then I just go eat out or I just eat junk or whatever's left.
Yeah.
So part of, being a nutritionist, is taking in consideration what their individual need is, right? So if I have a hormone client that's struggling with thyroid issues, or if I have somebody who has a food allergy to eggs, talking the other spectrum, at the end of the spectrum on that, I then help them think outside of that box. And what I come to find, speaking to your point of having a plan, they're overwhelmed by the plan. I find that a lot in this industry. If they've seen a nutritionist, they've seen a dietitian, and they're discouraged and they're lost and they've been on this health journey before and they've done nothing but yo-yo. We have to make it realistic and doable for your life, and everybody is different. So if I have somebody who is an extreme amount, high level cooker, I would provide a 7-day plan for them and say, okay, here's a 7-day plan. There's recipes attached. There's a grocery list on the back. There are portion guides in the end. It's a 11-page, summary basically. Now that person can handle it and they appreciate it and they want those recipes and they're going to follow all that stuff. But my mom of 6, who is going to be at a softball field or baseball field on a Saturday and lacrosse on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and track field on Monday, Tuesday, I mean, like, that is my schedule right now when we are in it. They're going to look at that 7-day plan and say, no way. So a lot of times what I'll say is, okay, I'm going to give you a plan, but I'm going to make it really easy. I want you to pick 3 days. I want you to pick 3 of those days, and I want you to just do those 3 days. And then I want you to look at the rest of it, but, save that for another time. Do the 3 days, and then either cook double the amount so you can put half of it in your freezer, and then another fun tip that I like to do is tell people that, especially my age, so I'm almost 40, and our age, our generation, we ate family style as kids, right? Mom sat down, most of us did, and made meals and things at the table from what I experienced. And then now our culture has just gotten to the point where everybody's so fast and so moving now. We have to have plans. We have to have all these plans. So we're not eating out. We have to change with the culture change, right? So what I've told my clients is that do one thing that is fun. Go out and buy, the food preparation containers. I like the glass ones, the Purex, So rather than family style putting away, here's a large Tupperware of, let's just use green beans. Here's a large Tupperware container or Ziploc bag of chicken breast we cooked or baked, or a casserole dish, right? And here's a large container of, whatever else we had. Let's break it down. And instead of putting large containers away, just make those little meal preps when you're putting away, pop 2 in the freezer, 2 in the fridge. And in a month's time, you have your own freezer meals that you cooked, and you don't have to eat the same leftovers over and over and over again. So, that's one of the biggest tips that I can tell people, that if you just make that one change how you put your food away. Just do that. And it's a big help, and then minimize the amount of planning, because people seem, like I said, they get so overwhelmed that then they just don't do anything, So if 7 days is too overwhelming, which is typically what we do in the industry, and say, hey, here's a week's plan. Yeah. People get overwhelmed. So like 1, 2, 3 days, and that's it. Now, 3 days, rotation. We eat the same thing all the time. Then we talk food allergies, and that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense, right? I always talk about on this podcast, adherence, right? That's the clinical term for sticking with something. If you're going to adhere to a diet, right, that's the only way you're going to be successful. And how do you adhere to it? Well, it has to be reasonable and rational. Like you said, it has to fit into your lifestyle. It can't be outside of that. In addition to that, there's always room to progress. You want to start people light. Yes. So maybe you do start them at 3 days, and then maybe you have a client who comes back to you 2 weeks later and said, this has been actually very easy for me. You go, okay, let's add a 4th day in, or now you're ready to take the next step up, or let's add this piece into the puzzle here. So we don't, we don't want to go 0 to 60 with clients, not with all clients. Some people need that, but also some people need to be pulled back. I just had a conversation with someone on my podcast yesterday that podcast will probably be out right before this or right after this, about, stress. And there's certain people who thrive in stress. All they want to do, like, they basically want their minds to be busy at all times, and they don't want to sit down with their thoughts and do these sorts of things. And those people, you have to pull back sometimes, right? You have to pull them back.
Oh, I'm guilty.
Yeah. And you have to pull, and same thing in the nutrition world. Some people are too regimented, and then when they miss something, they're mad at themselves, right? And they go into this downward spiral, and you have to say, hey, it's okay. It's just, we have long-term goals that supersede our short-term goals, and you're going to screw up sometimes short-term. Just be prepared next time, and forget it. You need to have amnesia.
Yeah. And I use that very much so as, I'll say, well, this is a guide. This is not something you have to 100% stick to it. And you also, I'll also say, if this is going to be obsessive, it takes one click for me to remove all the information off of there. You don't have to know your macros. You don't. I have made you a menu. That is what is required for your day. You don't have to know that, and so you have to kind of give them the permission of, like, it's okay to know that, that you don't have to use it as a guide and a learning tool. But I have had a very large portion of clients that have come that are just like, I can't use that tracking app. I can't, because I just need you to tell me what to eat on a regular basis, because I get way too obsessive with that, and then it becomes a problem. So absolutely.
Jessica, this has been fantastic information, everything from our egg conversation to our chickens to the great nutrition information you gave on both habits and particular foods. Why don't you let my audience now know where they can find you if they're general population, maybe they want to work with you, or maybe they're actually personal trainers or people who are in our health and fitness realm and they have a question for you, wherever's best to reach you.
Absolutely. I have a Facebook page called Health for Life, Nutrition and Training. I'm also on Instagram with Jessica Chandler. I mean, you can just find me Jessica Chandler. And then I also have a Facebook group that we have nutrition question Q&A that is going to be starting up monthly here soon. But just questions like this, well, I'll have office hours where, you know, whoever wants to pop on can talk and shoot questions for a nutritionist. I have been a personal trainer for a long time. I came from the military. So I enjoy that, but you know, the nutrition side of it is definitely my passion, and a lot of trainers will use me as a nutrition source for their clients if it's beyond their scope. So that's where you can find me, and I do make meal plans, and we do training programs there. So if you have any other questions, you could reach out. And I'll go ahead and share my information after this.
Sure. I will put all those links in the description for the podcast. My guest today has been Jessica Chandler. Thank you so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast.